Hello and welcome to One Decision in Brief. I'm Kate McCann and I'm joined, as always, by Sir Richard Dearlove. There is plenty for us to talk about. It's been a huge up and down period, as it always is. But I want to sit back a little bit today and reflect on Donald Trump, his strategy, and how world leaders should approach his methods, I suppose. And I started thinking about this because we saw, I'm going to call it an ambush, the second ambush. Cyril Ramaphosa in the Oval Office with Donald Trump. And the president turns down the lights, wheels out a video and shows a video which he says is evidence of white genocide. And, you know, I felt history repeating itself. It felt very similar to what happened with President Zelensky. Is this Trump's new method to put the pressure on world leaders, do you think?
How many times can you do it? Because you can do it twice, maybe you can do it 3 times, but other than that, people are going to come prepared, or they're not going to come at all because they don't want to be embarrassed in front of American media, and it's all been filmed, it's all set up. I mean, Ramaphosa, who's quite a sophisticated politician, handled it pretty well, and he wasn't wrong-footed. I mean, clearly Musk must be partly behind it, given his South African origins, and he's been put up to it. But it's quite an extreme way to behave, isn't it?
Let's come back to the details of that, the question about what Trump is alleging, the white genocide. For me, it felt like this is a method refined. So the first time we saw it with Zelensky, it felt like you had J.D. Vance piling in, you had other politicians chipping in from the background, and it felt like a coordinated attack. There was less of that this time round, but more a coordinated strategy with the printouts of the newspaper articles and the video. And it combined to feel, again, like an ambush, but in a very different way. I think you're right that Cyril Ramaphosa did what he could. He tried to deflect, he tried to joke, he said, OK, we'll take it seriously. Do you think it will mean that people just won't go into the Oval Office like that anymore? They'll just refuse to do it. Can they refuse to do it?
I don't think they can. If you're going to the States and you want to meet the president, you're going to have to go to the Oval Office. He's not going to change the terms of the equation against himself. But the risk is if you go there and he's got something up his sleeve, he's going to slap you around the head with it.
Who's he playing to?
Oh, he's playing to the American media, for sure. What a fantastic way to keep yourself in the global headlines. And I mean, let's face it, he is a showman. And if you're a showman, you have to produce things that make sure everybody's talking about you. Trump is something of a genius when it comes to doing that. We're all talking about him all the time. And when we're running out of stories, another one is fed to us. So they obviously have a pretty sophisticated media policy, don't you think?
I do. And I also think your point there is a really valid one, and actually one we haven't. So Trump does 2 things. He's very good at tagging himself onto the narrative of the day, of the moment, which is why he moves so quickly through lots of different subjects. I mean, he's alleging that there is this white genocide. He's saying that there are thousands of white farmers that are being killed. They are the only people who are being given asylum in America. These groups of white, farmers, and we'll call them farmers, but they're not necessarily all farmers from South Africa. What's he doing? Why is he pursuing that? What's the end game?
I guess the end game is to point up the issue and explain why they've opened the door to white farmers when immigration is such a problem. And Ramaphosa made the point that this is an issue of law enforcement. It's not an issue of genocide.
Do you think that kind of approach that Donald Trump takes, I mean, that's part of what this podcast is about? There's no simple answer, for example, on Israel, Gaza, or Ukraine, Russia. There is no simple answer, and the complexities and grey areas around all of it. Is it helpful to have a leader who doesn't take the view, as many do, that one side is all right and one side is all wrong?
I think it's very dangerous, and I think it's problematic. And the idea that there's a simple solution, well, Trump saying I can solve the Ukrainian problem in a day. Of course he can't. I always think of peace in Ireland, let's say, when we start discussing these things. You have a situation in Ireland which is very hard to interpret if you don't know the history, which goes back to the 16th century. And it literally goes back to the 16th century. And that's replicated particularly in Europe, where you have these long ethnic clashes which have had no solution, like Serbia and Kosovo. There is no easy answer. There usually are arrangements, but there's no solution to the fundamental problem. So you live with the arrangement, and the arrangements are either better or worse, depending on how well conceived and deeply rooted they are.
Yeah, and often it's to do with economics. I mean, this is the other thing that I find really interesting about Donald Trump. It's the naked economics, the naked, this is the guy who's taken delivery of a plane, millions of pounds worth of freebie plane. I mean, you're shaking your head, but this is happening, right? This is his naked economics. Yeah.
Well, he's accepting a present from Qatar, but there's something uncomfortable about it. Okay, it may be technically okay, because lots of heads of state give other heads of state presents. The famous examples of Giscard d'Estaing and Bokassa's gold. Do you remember all of that? You probably don't. Yeah. The enrichment of individuals. But there's something, distasteful. And it's definitely stretching the ethical rules, which in the States, surprisingly, were, at least until Trump arrived, pretty strict.
Does it make it easier to understand his foreign policy moves if we look at every decision he makes through that lens?
Well, I think if you start looking at it through the business deal lens, it may begin to explain. So the idea that if Russia makes peace, they're going to get all these business deals from the United States, well, maybe, but it's a very peculiar optic for viewing geopolitics if it's exclusive, and I'm beginning to feel that is the only one he looks through.
Do you think it could work?
In some cases it might. I mean, for example, if the Russian economy is as bad as we think it is and it's on the floor, if you take a 20-year view of Russia, maybe a strengthened economy and a more normal Russia that is trading successfully with business partners, including the United States, might be a better endgame than what we're looking at now, which might be an implosion of the Russian economy because it's so stressed as a result of the Ukrainian war.
Yeah, I think it's running a deficit, isn't it, for the first time, or a proper deficit for the first time.
Yeah, it's really in a difficult place. And the Sovereign Wealth Fund, which was basically built on energy supplies to Western Europe, which was huge, is pretty much spent now.
Yeah, which is, of course, where we end up at odds with leaders in the UK and the West, like Keir Starmer and others, who say sanctions, we need more sanctions, and the American regime, which is looking in a very different direction at Russia as an opportunity. Yeah.
Well, I think there's always been this concern about Russia's economic collapse. And one of the arguments within the Biden administration, not much publicised, for making sure that there wasn't an outright Ukrainian victory, was the danger of a Russian collapse and the fact of an imploding Russia where you had regional forces beginning to break the country up would be a worse outcome than a war in Ukraine.
Yeah.
So I think that concern is still definitely there.
Follow the money. That's what it all comes down to in the end.
I fear that is the optic. I can imagine Trump sitting there with, thick glasses with dollar signs on them.
You mentioned presents. When you were working, did you exchange presents with your opposite numbers like politicians do? When they go on visits, they always hand over a gift, don't they? Did you do that?
No, not really. I mean, we gave little bits and pieces.
Like what? Like a badge? Like an MI6 badge?
Yeah, I mean, something like that. But I mean, we didn't, we were very strict, really. We have massively strict rules on receiving gifts. And then the problem is you go to the Arab world and you're head of MI6, you probably come back with, a super expensive watch or something which you've been given, but you have to hand it
over, yeah. Well, politicians in this country, if they're given a gift over, I think, £150.
That's the same rule.
It's the same rule. Yeah. So did you ever keep anything that was...
Of course not.
You didn't? Because you can pay to keep it.
Oh, no, you can buy it back. When I retired, I bought back one or two of the presents I'd been given. And it's quite advantageous. I mean, they value them at resale value, of course, which is much less than they cost.
Yeah.
So I've got a few bits and pieces, things that I thought were worth keeping. But not many.
Like,
not many.
Such as?
Oh. Well, I've got some wonderful kitsch bits and pieces that Gaddafi gave me. But those have no value other than curiosity value now.
Like what? What did he give you?
Well, sort of brass plates with, enamelled maps of Libya on them, and then embossed sort of images of him. I mean, they're really bizarre, peculiar things. But of course, you suddenly realise that in 10 years' time, they'll be historically curiosities and quite peculiar and quite unusual.
What do you do with that? Do you hang it in the downstairs loo? Where is it?
It's in a cupboard. I'm not sure I'm going to hang out my Gaddafi memorabilia.
You could have a room for Gaddafi memorabilia.
Yeah, well, I mean, I've got a load of weird stuff. Presents that the Russians gave me, which they love giving you sort of engraved glassware and crystal glasses. I mean, actually, probably quite expensive in a way, but completely useless. You're never going to, super ornate things with sort of filigree gold around them and so tasteless.
Kitsch.
Kitsch.
The Russians are camp. Very camp.
Yeah.
I remember William Hague, who, of course, was the former Foreign Secretary, UK Foreign Secretary, saying that he'd gone to America and been given by his opposite number at the time, who I can't recall who it was, he was given a pair of cowboy boots with WH embossed into the cowboy boots, which I think he did keep because he loved them so much.
No, well, I've got a wonderful cowboy hat that I was given when we had a meeting with CIA somewhere in Arizona or in Texas, and they gave us a sort of cowboy gear. And when I'm gardening in Cornwall, I wear my Stetson. It's a fantastic hat.
Does it have your name on it?
No, unfortunately, but it sort of keeps the really keeps the sun off.
Wow.
And it's great to wear in the winter because it's felt.
Yeah.
Shaped. It looks like a Stetson.
Can't beat that.
That's
what a
great.
gift.
It's a great gift. So there are peculiar gifts you've got. I've got one of those amazing Afghan woolly hats, in brown woven wool, which are fantastically warm to wear in the winter. And I've got an amazing Afghan coat, which is wool, brown wool, but embroidered in Cornwall. That's my dressing gown.
And that is more information than I expected to hear today. So, Richard, thanks very much. Great to see you.
Great to chat.
Well, that's it for this week. That is our one decision in brief. Make sure you check out the rest of our episodes wherever you get your podcast from. And, of course, you can find plenty more like this on our YouTube channel.